All right, so get ready because today we are going deep, deep into a world I bet you would never expect. The surprisingly litigious world of toys. You guys know how this works. You send us some cases, and we try to figure out if they're actually, cases. And wow, let me tell you, some of these toy cases, they're pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't think something as simple and innocent as a toy could end up in court, but
You would think that, right? But apparently not. The main thing we're looking at today is an article from the top10s.com. They made a list of products that they think are just ripe for litigation, just ready for lawsuits. And their take on kids' toys, well, let's just say it sparked some pretty interesting debate. I mean, we're talking everything from poppin' balloons to dolls that look a little too familiar, if you know what I mean, and
yeah.
all the legal stuff that could come along with that. I'm really glad you're here to help us unpack this, given your background in product liability.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to see if any of these claims could actually, hold up in court.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, so the article, it starts off with a pretty unexpected culprit. Pencils. Of all things, pencils. And they say there's concern about kids stepping on them and getting lead poisoning. I mean, I remember chewing on pencils as a kid, but stepping on them.
Well, lead exposure, I mean, it's a serious thing, especially for kids. But there have been some big changes to like regulations and manufacturing to address that, Like remember lead paint?
Oh, yeah.
Thank goodness that's gone. But anyway, for pencils, I mean, the amount of lead in there is tiny, and it's all encased in wood. I guess a broken pencil tip could be a little risky, but I mean, only if a kid eats it. Like a kid stepping on a pencil, I really doubt they'd lead to any kind of serious lead exposure.
So maybe not the lawsuit magnet, the article makes it out, don't you?
Exactly. The risk just isn't really there.
All right, good to know. So, speaking of creativity, that kind of brings it to our next one, the modeling clay controversy. Now, I totally get the concern about choking hazards with small toys. That's common sense. But this article, it suggests that lawsuits could come from the content of what kids, actually sculpt. Like they specifically mention anatomically accurate figures or, and this is kind of funny, tiny little clay weapons. So is there any legal precedent for this at all?
Well, that's where things get a bit tricky. Legally speaking, holding a company responsible for how a kid uses a product, especially when it comes to, artistic expression, that's really tough to do. Like, it would be so hard to prove that the toy directly caused whatever harm, allegedly came from a kid's artwork.
So no lawsuits for sculpting questionable clay figures.
Probably not, no.
That's good news for our future artists out there. But okay, this one honestly got me a little worried. The article says the Boom Boom Balloon game. You know that game where kids just pop balloons? They say that could be violating OSHA noise regulations. Like apparently balloons popping can reach hundreds of decibels, which is way above what's considered safe, especially for little ears. I mean, is that true?
Okay, so noise-induced hearing loss, that's a real thing, no doubt. And OSHA regulations, those are important. They protect workers from being around loud sounds for a long time, especially in like factories and stuff. But the thing is, those rules, they're designed for workplaces. They're not really meant for a kid popping a balloon at home. Like, yeah, balloons can be loud, but it's for a really short time. I seriously doubt a kid playing this game would be exposed to enough sound to actually hurt their ears.
Okay, that's a relief. My ears was starting to ring just thinking about it. Okay, so now we're getting to some serious drama. This article says certain doll brands, they name Our Generation, My Life, and Adora's Amazing Girl dolls could be infringing on American Girl territory, like their trademarks or something. And that could lead to, and I guess, some big legal battles.
Ah, yeah, intellectual property law. I can get complicated. Basically, companies can get sued if their products are too similar to, other products that already exist. Especially if there's a chance people might mix them up. Think about like, those fake designer handbags or shoes that try to sell as the real thing. So for these dolls, it really depends on the specifics, like how they're designed, their brand names, how they're marketed. If the courts decide these brands are purposely copying American Girl's stuff, their intellectual property, then yeah, they could be in trouble.
I could see how that'd be a problem, especially for like a huge brand like American Girl. But the article takes it a step further. It says that American Girl revolutionized the study of American history, which I don't know, that seems like a bit of a stretch, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they're historical dolls. They're cool and they can be educational, I guess. Maybe they get some kids interested in history, but I think saying they revolutionize the whole field, that's a bit much. Like, historians would probably disagree with that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so maybe not a full-blown historical revolution. But this one had me wondering if the article was maybe, I don't know, blowing things out of proportion a bit. It claims wubble bubble balls and hopper balls could get hit with lawsuits because of their shape. Apparently one looks like, female anatomy and the other one looks like male anatomy. I'm like, come on, really?
Well, now we're getting into some pretty uncharted legal territory. Product liability law is mostly about design flaws that are, actual safety hazards. It's not really clear if how a product looks by itself could be reason for a lawsuit. Especially it's all about like subjective interpretation.
Right, like I get it. Some people might think it's funny, maybe a little awkward, but is that enough to actually go to court over?
I really don't think so. There would have to be, some real harm or at least a real risk of harm because of how the product's designed. Simply looking like something is not really going to cut it, legally speaking. It just feels like, I don't know, someone looking for a reason to be offended.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so on that note, let's move on to a toy like a slightly less anatomical design. This one's a little more straightforward. It's the Leapfrog Fun and Learn Phonics bus. Seems pretty harmless, right? It's a bus, it's educational. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Well, the article, they're saying the problem isn't with the bus itself. It's how some kids are using it. Apparently, some kids have been using it as a skateboard, like a makeshift skateboard. And you can imagine how that could lead to some accidents, some bumps, bruises, maybe even worse.
I've got to admit, I never thought about riding a phonics bus like a skateboard, but I guess, kids will be kids. But does that really mean Leapfrog is, like, liable for that?
That's where this idea of foreseeable misuse comes in. It's a legal thing. Companies, they got to design and make products that are safe when they're used how they're supposed to be used. But they're also supposed to think about, like, reasonably foreseeable misuse. A bit of a balancing act.
So if Leapfrog could, like, reasonably guess that a kid might try to skateboard on their bus, they could be held responsible for injuries, even though, like, that's not what the bus is for.
Yeah, exactly. It comes down to whether the company did enough to prevent harm that they could have seen coming. So in this case, it depends on a few things, like, I don't know, the design of the toy, if there are warnings, and what age group it's for. Like, if it's for toddlers, skateboarding probably wouldn't be considered foreseeable misuse, right? But if it's designed in a way that makes it, I don't know, really easy to ride, that could be a different story.
So maybe Leapfrog should slap a big warning label on there that says no skateboarding on the phonics bus. Or maybe they should, like, redesign it so it doesn't look so rideable.
Yeah, those are possibilities. It's all about minimizing risk, making sure it's safe, but also letting kids have fun, right?
Right. Okay, so for our last toy today, we've got kind of a head scratcher, the Disney Pixar Cars Damaged Moot Springs Racer.
Damaged Mood Springs Racer, huh? They really don't beat around the bush with that name.
Nope, they don't. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a little toy race car that's, been in a crash. It's got dents, scratches, the whole thing. The article says this could be traumatizing for kids and lead to lawsuits. I mean, is it really that big of a deal?
That claim, it makes you think about what toys are supposed to do for kids, right? And how much we should protect them from, the realities of the world. It's like we want to keep kids safe, but we also want them to experience stuff, even if it's maybe a little upsetting. It's all about balance.
So are we saying that a toy car that's like pretend been in an accident is going to scar a kid for life?
I highly doubt it. I mean, legally speaking, it'd be almost impossible to say that a toy like that is actually traumatic enough to sue somebody over. Kids see all kinds of stuff every day. Toy cars, even banged up ones. I just don't think those are going to cause real trauma.
It sounds like it's more up to the parents, how much they want to control what their kids see and play with.
Absolutely. Different parents have different ideas about what's okay for their kids, and that includes toys. Some parents, maybe they want toys that are, all happy and fun. Others, maybe they see the value in toys that are more like, real life, even if that includes accidents and stuff. It's all part of being a kid.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think what we're seeing throughout this whole deep dive is that a lot of these potential lawsuits, they're based on people's opinions, and worries about stuff. Maybe even a little bit of like exaggerating things to make them sound worse than they are. It's not really about, breaking the law in a clear-cut way.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It's like we're getting more and more sensitive to anything that seems like a threat, even with, something as heartless as toys. And I think that's happening everywhere, not just with product liability.
It's like we're trying to make the world totally risk-free for kids, which, I mean, come on. We all know that's not possible.
Exactly. And that makes me wonder, are we doing kids a favor by trying to get rid of all risk in their lives?
That's a great point. We always talk about how important it is for kids to be resilient and adaptable, right? But how can they learn those things if they never have to face any challenges, even in like how they play?
I think you hit the nail on the head. If we try to make childhood like perfectly safe and controlled, we might actually be making it harder for kids to learn the skills they need to, deal with the real world, a world that's messy and unpredictable.
But what's the takeaway here? Are we saying parents should just like let their kids play with anything, no matter how dangerous it could be?
No, no, not at all. It's all about finding that balance. We shouldn't be aiming for a childhood that's completely free of risk, but more like, a risk-aware childhood.
I like that. Risk aware. So, what does that look like, practically speaking?
It means giving kids the information they need to make smart choices about their own safety. Talking to them about potential dangers, but without, like, scaring them and giving them the space to, explore, try things out, even mess up sometimes. But all within a safe and supportive environment, of course.
So, let them fall down sometimes so they can learn how to get back up, right?
Exactly. Those experiences, the falls, the scrapes, the times when they get frustrated, those are actually really important. Those are the things that teach kid how to solve problems, how to keep going when things get tough, how to handle surprises.
And that brings us back to toys. Toys aren't just, something to keep kids busy. They're tools that help them learn and grow.
Absolutely. Toys can help kids get creative, learn how to solve problems, and even learn how to get along with others. They can also be a safe way for kids to, like, explore their feelings and figure out tough situations through play.
Like, think about building blocks. Those teach kids about spatial reasoning, problem solving, and even how to work together if they're building something with other kids. And then you got dolls, action figures, toy cars. Those can help kids use their imaginations, tell stories, and figure out how people interact with each other.
Even something as simple as a cardboard box, a kid can turn that into a spaceship, a castle, a puppet theater. It's all up to their imagination.
It's amazing how something as basic as a toy can be so, I don't know, so complex with so many possibilities.
And as we've seen today, toys can also get us talking about important stuff, like safety, responsibility, and how our ideas about childhood are changing.
Okay, so to wrap things up, what's the one thing you want listeners to remember from our, journey into this world of surprisingly litigious toys?
Let's encourage our kids to play, to explore, to try new things. Let's not let fear and lawsuits, crush their curiosity and sense of wonder. Let's remember that a little bit of risk can actually help them become more creative, more resilient, and, just love learning.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this episode. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep playing, keep exploring, and remember, a little bit of risk. It's all part of the adventure.
And never underestimate the power of a cardboard box.
It's like we're so worried about keeping them safe physically that we forget about, their emotional well-being, like helping them be strong and deal with stuff that doesn't always go their way.
Yeah, it's almost like we want to get rid of all the bumps in the road. But those bumps, that's where you learn the most, right?
Exactly. So are we saying that parents should just let their kids play with anything and everything no matter what?
Oh, no, no, not at all. It's about finding that sweet spot. We shouldn't be aiming for a risk-free childhood, but more like a risk-aware childhood.
Risk aware. I like that. So what does that look like in, real life?
Well, it's about giving kids the knowledge to make good choices about their own safety. Talking to them about what could be dangerous, but without making them terrified. And let them explore and try stuff, even if they mess up sometimes. As long as they're in a safe environment, of course.
So let them fall down every now and then so they can learn to get back up.
Exactly. Those experiences, the falls, the bumps and bruises, those times when things get frustrating, those are the things that teach kids to figure things out, to keep trying, to, roll with the punches.
And that brings us back to toys. Toys, they're not just something to keep kids busy. They actually help them learn and grow.
For sure. Toys can make kids more creative, they can learn how to solve problems, and they can even learn to get along with other people. And they could be a safe way for kids to, work through their feelings and deal with tough situations through play.
Think about building blocks. Kids learn about shapes and space. They learn how to solve problems. And if they're building together, they learn how to walk as a team. And then you've got dolls, action figures, toy cars, all those things that let kids use their imaginations, tell stories, and figure out how people interact with each other.
Even a plain old cardboard box, a kid can turn that into anything. A spaceship, a castle, a puppet theater, whatever they can dream up.
It's pretty amazing how something so simple can be so, I don't know, so full of possibilities.
Yeah, and like we've been talking about today, toys can bring up some really important stuff, like how to stay safe, how to be responsible, and how our ideas about childhood are, kind of changing over time.
Okay, so as we wrap things up here, what's the main thing you want listeners to take away from all this talk about, this surprisingly litigious world of toys?
Let's encourage our kids to play, to explore, to try new things. Let's not let, all this fear and worry about lawsuits take away their curiosity and sense of wonder. Let's remember that a little bit of risk, it can go a long way. It helps them be creative, it helps them be resilient, and helps them, just love learning.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Until next time, keep playing, keep exploring, and remember, a little bit of risk is all part of the adventure.
And don't forget about those cardboard boxes.